Welcome the Lord's chosen. Truth waits, it never hurries, yet it arrives like thunder. That's the line a 19th century philosopher once wrote, and tonight it feels less like philosophy and more like a warning siren. Because what just happened isn't a gentle reveal, it's the digital equivalent of a meteor strike. Your past identity didn't just leak, it detonated. Within hours, hashtags multiplied faster than a billionaire's excuses, servers groaned under the traffic, and an entire corner of the internet momentarily forgot about cat videos. Here's a fact to chew on while the dust settles. According to a 2024 MIT analysis, a single shocking disclosure can spread online 6 times faster than verified breaking news. Translation? By the time you finish this sentence, someone you've never met is already arguing about a version of you they only discovered 10 seconds ago, and that's where it gets deliciously absurd. Everyone from your quietest childhood classmate to that co-worker who still thinks Wi-Fi is witchcraft has suddenly become an amateur historian of your life. They're rewinding every photograph, every typo, every accidental like on an old post, desperate to reconcile the you they thought they knew with the you who just walked on stage. It's like watching the world binge-watch your plot twist, popcorn in one hand, pitchfork in the other. But here's the twist inside the twist. This isn't just gossip or spectacle. It's a live experiment in how identity, memory, and control collide when the private becomes planetary. What does it mean when the story you once buried becomes the story everyone else thinks they own? And brace yourself. What if the most shocking part isn't what you hid, but what they reveal about themselves while trying to decode you? Grab your seatbelt and maybe your sense of humor, because we're about to dissect the anatomy of an identity reveal that broke the internet and rewrote the rules of who gets to tell your story. Number 1, the past isn't dead, it's data waiting to be weaponized. The past never really stays behind. It waits quietly like a file marked urgent that nobody sees until the right or wrong moment. When it finally surfaces, every small detail becomes a weapon or a tool depending on who gets their hands on it. That old text message, the college blog post you forgot existed, the photo from a night you barely remember, each piece is a fragment of data that can be rearranged into a story you may not recognize, and the people who find it aren't necessarily interested in accuracy. They're interested in control. That's the brutal truth of exposure. A hidden history isn't just personal memory, it's potential currency. The internet rewards anyone who can turn private facts into public drama. A single screenshot can be worth thousands of clicks, and clicks translate to power, social, financial, even political. What used to be innocent artifacts of your growth can suddenly be twisted into evidence of hypocrisy or scandal. The context that once made sense, how young you were, what pressures you faced, gets stripped away. All that remains is the shock value of discovery. This is why people guard their past so fiercely. It's not always about shame, it's about timing and agency. Controlling when and how your story unfolds is one of the last bits of power an individual has in a world addicted to oversharing. When someone else beats you to the reveal, they seize that power. They get to frame the narrative, to decide whether you're a hero, a villain, or a punchline. Suddenly, you're no longer the author of your own life. You're a headline, a trending topic, a talking point. What makes it even more dangerous is how ordinary this process has become. In the age of constant connectivity, people scroll and share with barely a thought. A single tap can unleash a chain reaction that reaches millions before you've even logged in. Once that data is out, it's practically impossible to pull back. The internet doesn't forget, it archives. So when a past identity bursts into public view, it's not just a personal moment, it's a live demonstration of how information, your information, can be weaponized in a heartbeat. The past isn't dead, it's a loaded database waiting for someone to hit send. Number 2, revelation is a mirror, not a confession. Revelation is never just about spilling secrets. When something hidden comes into the open, it doesn't hand people a neat little package of truth. It holds up a mirror and forces them to stare at their own faces. What they see in that mirror depends less on what you actually revealed and more on what they already believe about the world and about themselves. Your past identity, the one suddenly exposed, becomes a canvas where their fears, fantasies, and biases play out. They project their own unfinished business onto you because it's easier to read their story in your life than to confront their own. That's why 2 people can hear the same revelation and walk away with completely different conclusions. One sees betrayal, another sees courage, and a third sees a marketing stunt. They're not uncovering your reality, they're decoding their own internal wiring. The details of your past are just raw material for their interpretation. They will twist it to fit their narrative because that's how humans make sense of surprise. We rewrite it until it feels familiar. This is also why even the most carefully planned confession rarely lands the way you think. You can craft the perfect explanation, weigh every word, and still watch it spiral into something unrecognizable. People hear what affirms their pre-existing worldview. If they need a villain, they'll find one. If they crave a redemption arc, they'll crown you a hero. If they're jealous, they'll call it manipulation. The actual truth, messy, nuanced human, gets buried beneath their projections. And that's the hidden irony. The more personal and intimate the revelation, the less it ultimately belongs to you. Once spoken, it leaves your control and becomes a shared object of interpretation. Your honesty becomes their entertainment, their debate topic, their cautionary tale. In that sense, revelation is less a confession than a mass psychological experiment. Everyone who hears it is forced to confront what they believe about identity, forgiveness, and change. So when you reveal your past, you're not just telling a story, you're exposing a society's reflexes. The gasp, the outrage, the fascination all say more about the audience than the subject. In the end, the mirror you hold up reflects them far more vividly than it ever reflects you. Number 3, privacy was never innocence, only leverage. Privacy is often mistaken for virtue, as if keeping something to yourself means you have something to hide or something to be ashamed of. In reality, privacy is a form of strategy. It's about leverage, the quiet power to decide when and how the world learns your story. Holding parts of your past close isn't cowardice or deceit. It's an understanding that information is a form of currency, and timing is everything. When a person keeps their history private, they aren't necessarily running from guilt. They're managing influence. The moment a private detail is shared, it stops belonging to the individual and becomes public property, open to every interpretation and misinterpretation. That shift can change careers, relationships, and reputations overnight. Protecting the timeline of disclosure isn't about creating an illusion of innocence. It's about keeping the right to your own narrative before someone else turns it into spectacle. The modern world makes this tension almost impossible to ignore. Data brokers, social media algorithms, and casual oversharing mean that fragments of your life can circulate long before you consent. A single careless upload can create a permanent record, and once something is out, it can be copied, screenshotted, and reposted indefinitely. In a culture that feeds on exposure, silence is one of the last remaining tools of autonomy. What many people forget is that silence is not the same as secrecy. Secrecy hides with fear. Silence waits with intention. You can be perfectly transparent in character and still fiercely private about your history. It's not about fooling anyone. It's about recognizing that not every detail of your life deserves to be a public performance. When that boundary is broken, when someone digs up what you chose to protect, it feels like a theft because it is one. The thief isn't just taking facts. They're taking context, timing, and control. They're yanking away your ability to choose the moment of revelation and to frame it with the meaning it deserves. So privacy is never about proving innocence. It's about holding on to the last scraps of power in a world addicted to spectacle. It's leverage against those who mistake access for intimacy. A quiet assertion that your life belongs to you until you decide otherwise. Number 4, exposure turns spectators into co-authors. When a private story bursts into the open, it stops being a single voice and becomes a crowded room. The moment people know a secret, they can't resist adding their own lines. Strangers dissect screenshots, rephrase details, and post hot takes as if they were there from the beginning. Each retweet or comment is an edit, small on its own but powerful in the way it reshapes the bigger picture. This isn't simple gossip. It's an active rewriting of events. Someone will quote a half sentence and present it as the whole truth. Another will invent motives to explain gaps they can't fill. Someone else will remix it into a meme that travels farther than the original revelation. In hours, the story is multiplied into versions you wouldn't recognize, each with a different hero, villain, or punchline. The audience becomes a swarm of ghostwriters who don't need permission to revise. The internet rewards this behavior. Algorithms boost what provokes emotion, not what preserves accuracy. A witty misquote or a spicy theory spreads faster than a careful correction. Before long, the collective version of your life has more momentum than anything you could publish yourself. Even if you speak up, you're just another commentator competing with the noise. Your first-person account becomes one voice among thousands debating what really happened. What's striking is how personal these rewrites feel to the people doing them. They're not just sharing information, they're inserting themselves into your narrative. Maybe they see a piece of their own struggles in your reveal. Maybe they want to be early adopters of the truth so they can say they knew it all along. Whatever the reason, your life becomes a mirror for their own unfinished stories. And once the crowd is involved, ownership of the narrative is gone. The story is now collaborative, but not in a way that respects you as the author. It's a living document, constantly updated by people who don't know you but feel entitled to your plot. Their edits shape how employers, friends, and strangers will remember you. That's the quiet power of exposure. It turns bystanders into co-authors, whether you invite them or not. And once they've written their chapters, the original draft is almost impossible to find. Number 5. The internet loves a villain more than a victim. The internet thrives on conflict, and nothing feeds it faster than a villain. When a hidden past surfaces, the crowd instinctively reaches for roles to make sense of the drama. They need a hero, a victim, and most of all, someone to blame. But the villain slot is the one that guarantees the most clicks, comments, and late-night debates. Outrage is viral fuel, and outrage always needs a target. Algorithms know this. Platforms are built to reward the content that provokes the strongest reaction, not the fairest understanding. A post that makes people angry will travel farther than a balanced explanation every single time. So when your past identity comes to light, even the smallest questionable detail can be amplified into evidence of dark motives. A mistake from years ago becomes a headline. A careless phrase becomes a weapon. The more intense the accusation, the wider the reach. Audiences also find a strange satisfaction in casting someone as the antagonist. It gives them a moral workout. They get to condemn, to debate, to feel righteous. Villainy offers a storyline they can rally around. They'll comb through old photos, misquote private messages, and create elaborate theories to prove their point. It stops being about you and starts being about the thrill of taking sides. In this theater, the truth is negotiable, but the performance of judgment is not. Even those who don't fully believe the worst version of your story may still share it. It's easier to join the noise than to resist it. Mockery and suspicion create a sense of community, people bonding over a collective takedown. Being the villain, even unfairly, provides endless content. Reaction videos, think pieces, meme threads. Each layer of commentary pushes the narrative further from reality and deeper into entertainment. This dynamic exposes something uncomfortable about how we consume information. The line between justice and spectacle blurs. What begins as a genuine revelation quickly mutates into sport, where outrage is entertainment and empathy feels dull. The more people click, the more the platforms profit, and the cycle feeds itself. So when your story breaks, the crowd's appetite for a villain often outweighs their interest in a victim's truth. In the economy of attention, the villain isn't just a character, they're the main event. Number 6. Shock is just the mind's lag in updating its map. Shock feels explosive, but at its core, it's just a delay. The mind builds a mental map of how the world works, who people are, what to expect, where the boundaries lie. When a revelation smashes through that map, the brain doesn't immediately update, it freezes. That sudden jolt people call outrage is really the system struggling to reboot. Their gasp isn't pure morality, it's a loading screen. When your past identity comes to light, anyone who thought they knew you has to reconcile two versions of reality. The one they carried in their head and the one you've just revealed. Until those two pictures line up, they feel unsettled. They might lash out or talk endlessly, not because the truth itself is unbearable, but because their internal navigation is out of date. The old coordinates no longer match the new terrain. This explains why some people react with dramatic language. I'm shattered, I can't believe it. This changes everything. They're describing the gap between yesterday's assumptions and today's evidence. The bigger the gap, the longer the lag. A small surprise is like a minor software patch. A life-altering reveal is a full operating system crash. And just like a glitching computer, they may reboot with errors, insisting you're lying or exaggerating because admitting the change is harder than fighting it. The phenomenon is universal. Neuroscientists describe it as cognitive dissonance, the discomfort when experience contradicts belief. The mind scrambles to close the distance, either by updating its map or by rejecting the new information. That's why some people eventually accept the truth, while others double down on denial. It's not a question of morality, but of mental flexibility. Understanding this doesn't excuse cruel reactions, but it does expose them. What looks like righteous judgment is often just the brain's lag. People aren't instantly wise enough to absorb a revelation and move on. They're running an old version of the story until their mental software catches up. So when the crowd recoils at your disclosure, recognize what's really happening. Their shock is a temporary error message, a flicker of outdated code. Give it time and most will quietly download the update. The drama isn't proof of your guilt, it's proof that their worldview just hit refresh. Number 7. Past selves are ghosts with receipts. The past doesn't vanish when you outgrow it. It lingers like a phantom that keeps its paperwork in order. Every version of you, awkward, reckless, ambitious, naive, left a trail that never stopped circulating. Old emails, photos, posts, school records, forgotten usernames. Each is a breadcrumb pointing to a self you may have shed but can't erase. Those fragments don't simply sit in a dusty archive. They drift through search engines, hard drives, and other people's memories, ready to surface at any moment and challenge the identity you wear today. This isn't just about embarrassing memories, it's about how identity itself is built. We like to think of ourselves as a single, continuous person, but life is more like a series of drafts. You've rewritten yourself countless times, sometimes dramatically, sometimes in small adjustments, while the world quietly saves every earlier version. The problem is that these earlier drafts still hold legal, digital, and emotional weight. A past opinion, once trivial, can be screenshot and spread. A youthful mistake can resurface as evidence against your credibility. Those ghosts don't need context. A single out-of-time detail can feel louder than your present reality. Technology gives those ghosts an almost supernatural reach. Search engines cache deleted pages. Cloud backups preserve photos you thought were gone. Even when you try to lock down your accounts, someone else might have copies or screenshots. What once felt fleeting is now permanent infrastructure. The receipts are everywhere and they don't care about your growth or your explanations. But the haunting isn't only digital. People carry memories of you that you can't edit or update. An old friend may remember a careless remark. A relative might retell a story in ways you can't control. Each recollection is another receipt, subjective yet powerful. Your present self might feel entirely different, but those who knew you before can unknowingly summon a past you at any time, reintroducing a version you thought you'd outlived. Living with these ghosts requires a strange kind of honesty. You can't silence them, but you can refuse to be defined by them. Growth doesn't erase evidence, it adds new chapters that complicate the record. The receipts remain, but they're proof of movement as much as missteps. Your past selves may keep wandering, but they can't speak louder than the life you're actively writing now. Number 8. Fame by revelation is a double helix of power and surveillance. Fame that arrives through a shocking revelation is a paradox. It gives you extraordinary influence while tightening an invisible leash. The moment your past identity becomes public spectacle, you gain the ability to shape conversations, spark debates, and bend cultural attention. People dissect your words, mimic your style, and build content around your name. Their obsession grants you a strange authority. You occupy their screens and their thoughts. But the same attention that amplifies your voice also locks you inside their constant observation. Every post you share, every pause between appearances, even your silence, is scrutinized for meaning. Strangers feel entitled to interpret your gestures, moods, and choices. The gaze of millions becomes a form of surveillance so pervasive you can sense it without logging in. Algorithms ensure that speculation about you never stops. Someone is always tracking, archiving, or spinning a new theory. The fame you didn't necessarily seek becomes a network of watchtowers built out of curiosity and envy. This cycle is what makes the experience a double helix, two strands twisting together, impossible to separate. On one side is power. You can steer trends, call attention to issues, or redefine your own narrative faster than most public figures ever could. On the other side is confinement. The very visibility that empowers you also means every step is monitored, analyzed, and sometimes weaponized. The audience that elevates you also expects ownership, as if your life is an open-source project they can audit at will. Psychologically, this can be disorienting. You begin to anticipate their reactions, tailoring what you say to avoid misinterpretation or to spark a certain headline. Your sense of self can start to mirror the crowd's expectations, creating a feedback loop where you are both influencer and influenced. Their gaze reshapes you while you're busy shaping them. And the more sensational the revelation that launched your fame, the tighter the grip becomes. People feel invested in the origin story. They watch to see if you'll stumble or transform. Leaving that spotlight isn't as simple as logging off, because the audience carries you in their feeds and their conversations. Fame by revelation is seductive because it offers reach and relevance overnight. But it's a bargain with constant surveillance. Every ounce of power is braided with the knowledge that you're never fully unobserved, even in the quiet moments that used to belong only to you. Number 9. Identity is only stable until the next screenshot. Identity used to be something you could grow into, shed, or quietly revise. Now it's as fragile as the next screenshot. In the digital age, every post, comment, or photo is a potential fossil, preserved long after you've outgrown the person who created it. You might delete an account or carefully curate your feed, but someone, somewhere, has already saved a copy. One resurfaced image or half-forgotten tweet can suddenly redefine you, no matter how much life you've lived since it was created. This fragility gives strangers enormous power. A single archived post can resurface and override years of change, compressing your complexity into a single moment. It doesn't matter if you've matured, apologized, or completely transformed. The screenshot becomes a headline, a shorthand biography, a ready-made judgment that follows you into jobs, relationships, and public spaces. People will weigh that captured second more heavily than the years of growth that followed it. Technology makes this permanence effortless. Cloud backups, web crawlers, and data scrapers ensure that almost nothing online ever truly disappears. Even platforms that promise disappearing messages can be undermined with a quick screen grab. What was once a fleeting thought is now part of a permanent record you can't edit. The internet isn't a conversation, it's an archive that listens forever. This reality twists the idea of identity itself. You may feel like a different person at 30 than you were at 18, but digital evidence collapses that timeline. To the casual viewer, the old and new you coexist, forcing you to defend actions or words that no longer reflect who you are. Your present self has to negotiate with a past self that can be summoned in an instant without context or consent. It also means reputation can shift overnight. A single resurfaced post can undo carefully built trust or revive accusations you thought were long resolved. Careers, friendships, even family dynamics can be shaken by a screenshot's sudden arrival. The narrative you've built for yourself can be rewritten without warning, because digital memory doesn't respect chronology. It favors whatever is most shareable. In this landscape, identity is never fully settled. It's provisional, contingent on who finds what and when. The next screenshot isn't just a picture, it's a reminder that in the digital age, the past is always one click away from becoming your present. Number 10. The crowd craves redemption arcs but hates actual change. The internet loves a comeback story, on paper. People binge-watch shows about reinvention, share quotes about growth, and post hashtags about second chances. But when someone truly changes, when the transformation is real and visible, the cheering stops and the side-eye begins. The idea of redemption is thrilling. The reality of it makes people uneasy. Part of this comes from how audiences build their relationship with a public figure. They get attached to a fixed version of you, the one that fits neatly into the role they've assigned. The underdog, the rebel, the cautionary tale. Real change threatens that investment. If you no longer match the character they've been following, their story collapses. It's easier for them to believe you're pretending than to accept that growth is messy and irreversible. There's also the quiet envy factor. Genuine transformation takes work. Therapy, self-discipline, uncomfortable self-reflection. When you show that kind of evolution, it highlights what others might be avoiding in their own lives. Instead of celebrating your progress, they pick at it, searching for cracks. They call it a publicity stunt, accuse you of hypocrisy, or wait for you to slip so they can say they were right all along. Your success becomes a mirror reflecting their own stagnation, and not everyone wants that view. Algorithms intensify this tension. Outrage travels faster than nuance, and a redemption arc without scandal doesn't get the same clicks. A peaceful, sustained change is boring to an attention economy that feeds on spikes of conflict. So even as people claim to love growth, the system rewards any narrative that suggests you haven't really changed at all. This dynamic reveals a deeper contradiction. Society praises self-improvement in theory while punishing it in practice. It celebrates the idea of forgiveness but prefers the endless loop of downfall and drama because that's easier to watch and discuss. When you actually grow, you break the cycle, and with it the entertainment value. True transformation exposes how uncomfortable we are with permanence that isn't static. It proves that identity can be rewritten, and that scares those who need the world to stay predictable. So the crowd claps for redemption stories, but when faced with someone who's genuinely outgrown their past, they often turn cold. Real change isn't just rare, it forces everyone else to reconsider whether they're willing to change too. Number 11. Truth is radically contextual, never absolute. Truth sounds like something solid, but it behaves more like liquid. It takes the shape of the container it's poured into. The bare facts of your past might stay the same, yet the meaning of those facts shifts depending on who encounters them and the moment they surface. What looked like rebellion to one audience might appear as courage to another. What once felt like a scandal can later be celebrated as foresight. Context doesn't just color the truth, it rewrites it. Every person who learns your story brings their own filters, culture, politics, personal history, and mood at the time they hear it. Those filters decide what they notice and what they ignore. A sentence you wrote years ago might read as satire to one group and as a confession to someone else. The words haven't changed, but the readers have, and so has the world around them. Time adds another layer. Social norms evolve, language shifts, and events reshape collective memory. An opinion posted a decade ago might have fit the era, but when it reappears today, it collides with a new moral landscape. The same statement that once felt ordinary can suddenly be judged as radical or offensive, not because the intent has changed, but because society's reference points have moved. Even your own perspective isn't fixed. You might revisit an old action or decision and see it through a completely different lens, one colored by growth, regret, or hard-won understanding. Your present self can look back at your past self and read an entirely different story than the one you believed at the time. That means the truth of your past is as dependent on your current insight as it is on outside interpretation. This fluidity can be unsettling because we like to think facts are enough to protect us. But facts rarely speak for themselves. A photograph can prove you were in a place at a time, yet it can't capture motive, pressure, or inner change. The meaning people extract will always depend on their angle of view. So when a past identity resurfaces, the reality of what happened matters less than the context of its arrival and the eyes that witness it. Truth isn't a fixed monument. It's a living exchange between evidence, memory, and the shifting present, a story forever revised by the moment it's told. Number 12. The real collapse is in their projection economy. People don't just interact with you, they invest in an idea of you. Over time, friends, fans, even casual followers build a mental portfolio filled with assumptions, hopes, and small certainties about who you are and how you'll behave. It's not always intentional. They collect your words, your habits, and the version of your story they find most useful to their own lives. You become part of their emotional economy, a steady stock they count on to stay predictable. When a past identity comes to light, that economy takes a direct hit. The person they believed in, whether as a role model, confidant, or convenient antagonist, suddenly doesn't match the new data. All the investments they made in your supposed consistency lose value overnight. They may feel betrayed, but what's really collapsing is the projection they built, not the reality of who you are. Their outrage is the sound of a market crashing. This is why reactions can feel so disproportionate. It's not just curiosity or mild surprise. It's the panic of seeing their psychological portfolio wiped out. They have to rewrite the story they've been telling themselves about you, and that rewrite exposes how much of the relationship existed only in their minds. In a way, your revelation forces them to confront the fact that their attachment wasn't to you, but to their own narrative. Social media magnifies this phenomenon. Followers treat public figures and even acquaintances like personal brands they've bought into. They invest attention, likes, and emotional energy, expecting a return in the form of predictability and affirmation. When a hidden truth emerges, it feels to them like a sudden market correction. They scramble to reassess. Do they unfollow, defend, attack, or reinvent the meaning of their support? Their reaction is more about protecting their self-image than understanding your reality. What looks like moral outrage often masks a quieter fear, that if you can transform so completely, the stories they cling to about themselves might be just as unstable. Your evolution threatens the stability of their own identity investments. In that sense, your reveal bankrupts more than their assumptions about you. It challenges the whole economy of projection. They can no longer trade on the comfort of a fixed idea, and while they sort through the rubble of their expectations, you stand as proof that no one's emotional stock market is truly safe from the truth. Number 13, an exposed secret is an accidental freedom. When a secret slips into the open, the first feeling is often dread. You brace for judgment, for the sudden weight of everyone knowing what you tried to keep private. But once the initial shock fades, something unexpected happens. The air feels lighter. What was once a constant source of tension, guarding a detail, remembering every cover story, worrying about discovery, loses its power the instant it's out. You can't be threatened with exposure when the exposure has already happened. That shift is more than relief. It's a genuine transfer of power. While a secret stays hidden, it acts like a lever that anyone who discovers it can pull. A friend, a stranger, or even your own inner critic can use it to manipulate you. You might adjust your behavior, avoid certain conversations, or live with a low hum of anxiety just to keep the truth contained. The secrecy itself becomes a cage tightening around every choice you make. Once the cage breaks, leverage disappears. No one can dangle the threat of revelation over your head because there's nothing left to reveal. That's why whistleblowers, artists, and even everyday people sometimes describe a strange sense of liberation after the hardest disclosures. The story might still cause discomfort or controversy, but the fear of someone else controlling the timing or framing is gone. The narrative is no longer a weapon, it's simply a fact. Even psychologically, the effect is profound. Hiding a secret demands constant mental effort, editing your words, replaying interactions, guarding against slip-ups. When that labor ends, your mind reclaims energy for other things, creativity, relationships, rest. You're no longer split between the person you are and the person you pretend to be. There's only one version of you to manage, and it's the real one. The freedom isn't about inviting chaos or dismissing consequences, it's about reclaiming agency. A revealed secret might spark gossip or criticism, but those responses can be faced directly instead of feared in the dark. In that clarity, shame loses its grip. The worst has already happened, and you survived it. So while exposure can feel like disaster in the moment, it often ends as liberation. What was once a threat becomes something no one can use against you. The secret is no longer a shadow, it's just part of your story, and it no longer owns you. Number 14. The aftermath is an unwritten genre. When a revelation detonates, people rush to label it scandal, downfall, redemption. But the truth is that no one can write the ending except you, and even you don't know the genre yet. After the shock fades and the commentary cools, there's only the wide, uncharted space of the aftermath, a space that refuses easy categories. What you choose to do next becomes the plot twist that decides whether this was merely messy drama or the opening chapter of something larger. The aftermath is powerful because it's unscripted. The crowd expects a predictable arc, a tearful apology, a retreat, maybe a carefully staged comeback. If you follow the template, you reinforce their sense that they were right about you all along. But if you move differently, silent when they expect noise, bold when they expect shame. You disrupt their narrative. In that disruption, you reclaim authorship. Every decision carries narrative weight. Speak quickly and you risk looking defensive. Wait too long and they might declare you guilty by silence. Pivot to something creative and they may recast you as visionary. The same event that some called a scandal can over time read like prophecy if your next actions reveal foresight or principle. A revelation dismissed as gossip can transform into a manifesto if you use it to challenge deeper norms. This is why the aftermath is so unsettling to the audience. They can replay the initial shock, but they can't predict your evolution. They're forced to admit that the story isn't finished, and that they're not the authors. While they speculate, you have room to shape a meaning they can't control. The very people who once felt certain of your downfall end up waiting for cues from you to know how to interpret what happened. Time is an ally here. Public attention is impatient. It thrives on immediacy and forgets with equal speed. If you act with intention instead of panic, you let the noise fade and the deeper resonance emerge. What looked like chaos can settle into clarity, not because the past changes, but because you frame its significance through what you do next. The aftermath, then, isn't a cleanup, it's a creation. It's the blank page where you decide whether the revelation stays a footnote or becomes the start of an entirely new genre, one only you have the authority to name. In the end, a revealed past is more than a moment of shock or scandal. It's a lens that exposes the raw mechanics of identity, perception, and power. Every hidden detail, every long-forgotten post, every fragment of who you were has the potential to ignite, reshape, or even redefine the way the world sees you. But the truth is, the power never truly lies in the revelation itself. It lies in how you respond. You are not merely the subject of scrutiny. You are the author of the aftermath. The crowd may scramble to assign roles, twist narratives, and project fears, but their interpretations are fleeting. Your next move, the choices you make, the silence you hold, the boldness you display, decides whether your story becomes a cautionary tale, a manifesto, or a legend. In a digital world where identity is archived, screenshotted, and weaponized, your agency is the ultimate shield. The past may haunt, the algorithms may amplify, and the audience may speculate endlessly, but the life you are actively living is yours alone. Every exposure, every shock, every ghost of a past self is a test of perspective and resilience. Secrets once wielded as leverage become accidental freedom. Reactions that feel like collapse are merely lag in someone else's mental software. Villainy may attract attention, but clarity and control command true power. The chaos of revelation is temporary. Mastery over your narrative is permanent. So let the whispers circulate, let the projections multiply, and let the algorithms spin. None of it can define you unless you allow it. Your identity, your choices, and your evolution remain sovereign. The past may break the internet, but your present and your future write the story that really matters. This is more than survival, this is reclamation. This is proof that when your truth is revealed, you do not crumble, you ascend. If this video gave you a new perspective, a spark of insight, or even just made you think differently about identity and truth, don't let the moment stop here. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive like this. Smash the like button if this video challenged the way you see the world. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. You might inspire someone else, and share it with friends, family, or anyone who needs to hear this truth. Your engagement isn't just support, it's part of the conversation. Join the community, step into the discussion, and let's continue uncovering the hidden layers of identity, revelation, and power together. Stay blessed always.